If you want to learn how to completely transform your driveway with a seal coat, keep on watching. Let's get started.
Thank you, Georgia Boot, for sponsoring this week's video. Stay tuned to see how you can get 20% off site-wide. We're going to start with a bit of backstory on this project because this property was my elderly neighbor's house, which I completely gutted free of all this massive moss. There was over 800 pounds of moss removed, and I completely pressure washed it for her because I knew she couldn't do it herself. I did this during the winter, which means I couldn't actually seal coat it properly due to the fact that it was too cold. And unfortunately, between that time, my elderly neighbor passed away, but I still really wanted to make sure I stayed true to my word because I did tell her I was going to seal coat it. And thanks to all the amazing support from the BYOT audience, I was also able to seal coat it for free for the family. So let's go ahead and start the seal coating process. Luckily for me, between that time, all the blackberry bushes were removed and the Mercedes Benz that everyone seemed to want me to clean was purchased from a new loving owner. There's plenty of dirt and debris underneath the vehicle, so I did go about removing all of that in a neat, orderly fashion. No matter what your driveway looks like, the first step is to remove all of the large debris off the surface. And we did previously get rid of all the moss, but we did not get rid of all the dirt and rock. Now this is a large amount of dirt that's piled up next to her retaining wall, which I happily removed, but I couldn't remove all of it due to the fact that there's a large tree growing into on the left side, as you can see here. And because the family is in the process of trying to sell this home, I wasn't given permission to remove any of the root system. There was also a nice large pile of small rock as well as large boulders for retaining wall, and I wanted to remove all the small rock because there is asphalt underneath it, but the large retaining wall boulders need to be permanently repositioned by the soon-to-be homeowners. However, we did feel bad for this one boulder since it wasn't close enough to all of its friends, so we did move it in a sign of good faith. With all the large debris removed from our asphalt, it's now time to bring in our pressure washer. This machine has over 3,000 psi, which is what you want, especially when trying to clean an asphalt driveway. I hook up our hose and our pressure washing nozzle, as well as turn on our water before we start the machine. It's always important to make sure you have the water turned on prior to turning on the machine because it can overheat extremely easily if you don't. It's been over 8 months since I actually originally cleaned this driveway, which means there's still plenty of dirt and debris that needs to be washed clean. There are a number of steps you need to do prior to actually applying your seal coat because the most important part of this entire project is going to be the prep work. You need a perfectly clean surface in order to guarantee that you have proper adhesion between your asphalt and your seal coat. It does bug me that I have these large boulders in the way that I can't actually get underneath, but hopefully you don't have that on your specific project. Just know that I cleaned it as best I could up to a point. Keep in mind that we're doing multiple washes on this driveway, and this first wash is just one that I'm going to be removing all of the larger debris particles that can be easily removed with a pressure washing hose like this. Now, once we actually have all those large particles removed, we can move on to our asphalt washing solution and degreaser. However, at this point in time, if you do come across some greenery coming through your asphalt, like grass, it's now the perfect time to remove all of this growth because we can now get very deep into the surface structure of our asphalt with our soap and degreaser. On this project, I'm going to be working with ZEP driveway and concrete pressure washing solution. Now this is a concentrate, so I actually apply about 6 ounces of this product to our pressure washer and then fill up the remainder with water. Then close the cap, turn on the machine, and we're ready to start spraying. The pressure washer I'm using is a Husqvarna, and it comes with a multi-tip system that I can just rotate the setting with ease. I spray down this entire driveway vigorously, and I let it set for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. You really want to get this deep down into the asphalt because you want to make sure that all that debris that has been stuck in your asphalt for years comes loose, then we can proceed to our final wash. The one tool I highly suggest having on hand is this surface cleaner. Now this one's by Ryobi, but it's a 15-inch rotating surface cleaner, which does an incredible job at not only cleaning your surface in a much faster, orderly fashion, but the vast majority of the spray is contained within this circular device, which means you're not getting soaked as you're doing it. Keep in mind that I already pressure washed the vast majority of this driveway 8 months ago, which basically means this driveway is dirty, but it's not the dirtiest driveway you could possibly imagine. This is also kicking into high gear with our soap and degreaser, which was extensively needed around the Mercedes because that thing had been around for decades, I felt. As I make my way to the end of the driveway, I quickly realize that there's still a significant amount of soap still on the driveway, which is why I go back for a third and final pass with the standard pressure washing nozzle. It also gives me the opportunity to remove all that dirt and grime that might have been loosened up by our surface cleaner, but it wasn't actually getting off the driveway because that surface cleaner does slightly contain those dirt particles, and the pressure washing nozzle that I'm using now really gives me the opportunity to completely clean this entire surface. I provide the entire driveway with a very thorough rinse, and once that's taken care of, I let it dry overnight. Once we come back to it the next morning, guess what? We still need to do a little bit of prep work prior to sealing. There are a handful of sizable cracks that I actually removed the grass from previously, but in order to make sure this grass doesn't come back, we need to patch. I'm using Super Patch by Latex-ite, and it's basically just small particles of asphalt that I can pour into the more substantial holes, and then I apply some heat. I find heat activates this product extremely well, and it makes it much more malleable, especially when it comes time to tamping it down in order for it to be a more stable patch. As for the smaller, narrower cracks, I'm applying a black asphalt sealant to those areas so we can make sure and guarantee ourselves that they're filled prior to applying our sealer. As for larger cracks, you can still use the patch that I used previously. Just know ahead of time that these larger, more sizable cracks might need an asphalt sealant applied to the top of it after it cools down, or multiple coats of sealer once it comes time for that. But now that our driveway is clean and the cracks are filled, it's time for sealer. And for sealer, we're using Ultra Shield by Latex-ite. And before you use any type of sealing product, it should be vigorously mixed thoroughly. In the first can I open, I always drill a hole in the dead center of the can that I can fit my paddle mixer through. With that, I can actually have the lid still on because it actually allows me to mix the product while also avoiding any large splashes along the side, which can get very messy extremely quickly. And I do know I should have actually taken the top off first, then drilled the hole, and then started mixing the product versus just doing it right in the dead center with the product already in it. Our main tools of application are going to be just a chip brush and a squeegee. The chip brush is specifically used around the perimeter, and I do find it a lot easier just to pour a sizable amount with a small bucket and then use our chip brush accordingly across the perimeter. I work in about 10-foot long sections to make sure that I'm not going too far because I want to continually have a wet edge wherever I apply the product. Once that 10-foot perimeter stretch is taken care of, I pour the sealer right onto the asphalt and then start maneuvering our sealer with a 24-inch wide squeegee. There are areas on the side of the driveway where I don't need to worry about cutting in with the perimeter because I can actually just flow it off of the asphalt and create a perfect seal all the way across. One of the most important things when applying this product is to make sure that you have a nice consistent pass all the way across and making sure that it's not too thick of a pass. You want to guarantee that you have a nice cohesive layer but a thin layer because you want it to dry naturally and properly before you apply a second layer. Now you don't have to apply a second layer, but it is recommended based upon the product itself. And I have actually used this product in the past. I've used it on my own driveway and have had zero issues with cracking or peeling, and it's been on my driveway for over 5 years. It's actually my most viewed video on my entire YouTube platform, at least for the moment, but if you do want to check it out for yourself, I'll make sure and leave a link. The key with consistency on these passes is to 1, make sure you're not working with too much product, and 2, making sure that you're also working with gravity. I'm working down the driveway, which helps maneuver the liquid as needed and seems to be much more manageable in my personal preference. You also want to work with a slight angle to your squeegee, because if you don't, the sealer will run off of both sides, which makes it much more difficult to control lap lines. As you can see from here, I want all the excess sealer that's coming off of our squeegee to be only on one side of our squeegee, and that means I also want all that excess to be on the side of the driveway that we haven't finished yet. This does take a little bit of practice to get right, but once you get in the groove of things, it becomes very easy and straightforward. For this entire driveway, I mixed up 5 5-gallon pails, and know that I used about 4.5 of them, and that's only for one single coat. I would have applied 2 coats, but we were getting a little close to a potential rain in the future forecast, which is why I'm only sealing it with 1. Just know that you can always apply a second coat down the road. And on a general side note, you might have noticed that I'm wearing a respirator, and that's not because of this product. I really don't actually mind this product's smell whatsoever, but it's extremely poor air quality here in the Pacific Northwest because of wildfires, and I do not want to be breathing all of this smoke in while I'm working outside. So a simple helpful note for all those individuals wondering why. As I work my way to the entry point of our driveway, I use the same principles, making sure the ends are cut in correctly and applying the sealer with a nice cohesive pass right before it gets too dark to work. As I make my way to the driveway the next morning, I do realize that there are still some areas that need to be dried properly. And it would have dried naturally, but I wanted to give it a little bit of extra oomph, which is why I have a propane torch. This device does wonders when working with large surface areas like this, but also note that Ultra Shield actually has ThermoSeal technology built into it, which means that this product will cure all the way down to 40 degrees, which is almost unheard of in this type of application. When working with a large propane torch like this, just make sure you're very careful that you don't accidentally burn down any shrubberies or your house or hurt yourself. But in order to make sure you don't burn yourself, it's always important to have good quality boots, and that's where Georgia Boot comes into play. They have an amazing lineup to choose from, and this is their AMP LT Power Wedge that not only kept my feet extremely dry and warm during this entire project, but it's also specifically designed for heat resistance. And if you want to get 20% off these boots or any of the other amazing boots to choose from, then check out the link in the description box below and use BYOT to get 20% off at checkout. But with that said, we are done. This driveway certainly has had one amazing transformation and makeover. It's incredible what it looks like now compared to what it did originally, and I was so grateful that I had the opportunity to do this for my elderly neighbor for free. I honestly didn't know how poor of health she was in when I did this originally. I was just trying to help out a neighbor that couldn't do it herself. I'm literally tearing up just thinking about this because not only am I helping others learn how to seal coat their driveway, but I also was able to help out my neighbor when she needed it most, and that's what I call one truly beautiful, sexy beast. Oh yeah. I'm glad you just can't see me right now. I'm an ugly crier.